Hello healers and has-beens, my name is Tibius Guide, and we are still in the long and arduous process of cataloging some of the oldest champions in League of Legends and taking a look at their character design and their lore states in order to try and, pass a commentary on just how poorly Riot has, in many cases, mismanaged their narrative universe. And we've reached another old friend. Now, if you remember last time, I talked about Ashe, whose character design I have substantially criticized in the past, in fact, dedicating half of an entire video to doing so, and so I spent the most of that video talking about her lore. Well, we've got a bit of an opposite situation here, because with Soraka, I have an entire video, and quite a long one, dedicated to criticizing the specific state of her lore, but I've never actually taken a closer look at her character design and given that a thorough critique. So, in an interesting little fun mirror of our previous video, we're going to be doing that in this one. We'll go through, like, the basics of her lore, because honestly there really isn't that much there to talk about, and talk about why that's a problem, and then we'll spend the rest of the video mostly talking about issues of character design and how it might be possible to fit Soraka into the modern League of Legends universe. So, a wanderer from the celestial dimensions beyond Mount Targon, Soraka gave up immortality to protect the mortal races from their own more violent instincts. She endeavors to spread the virtues of compassion and mercy to everyone she meets, even healing those who would wish harm upon her. And for all Soraka has seen of this world's struggles, she still believes the people of Runeterra have yet to reach their full potential. This is Soraka's lore. That's it. That's all there is. And if you take a look at her biography page, well, what you'll find is a lore that's not canon at all. So Soraka, and I'll talk about the video where I talk about her lore is linked in the description. I go into excruciating detail about all this, but essentially Soraka and Warwick used to be tied together as characters. Each was the origin of the other. Warwick caused Soraka to lose her divinity by forcing her, or rather tricking her, into using her powers to attack someone, which is now, when you are a star child of healing magic, then that's a bad thing to do, and so Soraka is turned into this goat creature that we know and love, be as punishment for using her powers to do harm. Warwick, for his part, wanted to kill her and take her heart for a potion that would turn him into a powerful super soldier or something like that. And Soraka, being understandably pissed about this, curses him and turns him into a werewolf. That is one of the original lore states that they had. This then got revised a few times over the years until finally, with the rework of Warwick recently, it was retconned out of existence. Warwick now has absolutely nothing to do with Soraka. They are not connected in any way whatsoever, and so this lore we've got here is void. It's void. It doesn't... No, none of this is real, which means that the only lore Soraka has is this tiny, tiny little blurb right here. Soraka is one of those perennial black holes in League of Legends lore. She's an old champion who, it's just, as Riot have never followed up on her, they've never really managed to update her properly. So, in more recent times, there have been a slight retcon to her in that she didn't used to be associated with Mount Targon. I think at some point she was actually associated with Ionia, but in this little blurb, and it seems that it's the concept that they're going with, she is another of the Targonian aspects, possibly an aspect of healing or just a wanderer from the celestial dimensions beyond Mount Targon. But I'm a little curious about that, because in one of the recent stories that was published for, I believe it was Syndra specifically, there's a character in there, an Ionian Vastaya, who is doing stuff because they have heard a prophecy from Soraka telling them that they need to do the stuff that they're doing in order to not have their children die or something along those lines, which suggested, or indicated at least, that Soraka was Ionian, or that she was at least accessible to Ionians to a certain extent. Which ties us into the character design discussion, which is going to form the majority of this particular video, because, well, in terms of what does Soraka look most like when it comes to the races and creatures in modern League of Legends, the answer is, well, she looks a lot like a Vastaya. The Vastaya, if you remember, are specifically human-animal hybrids. Like, that's sort of their whole concept. They're humanoids with animal traits of various kinds. So it's Siren Arcana birds, we've got Rengar, who's like cat creature dude or whatever, and that's sort of, it's been a nice little category for League of Legends to reclassify a lot of their old champions into, who didn't really fit into any other categories and who were kind of disparate and didn't really have anything unifying about them, League of Legends said, okay, so humanoids with animal features, all the furries basically of League of Legends, they're Vastaya now. That's where we're going to put them. Whether they are fully furry like Rengar are, or whether they just like run around with some horns and a couple of goat legs like Soraka. And so if they're not going to go with a Targon angle, which they might, like anyone can go to Targon and become an aspect after all, but if they're not going to go specifically with a Targon angle, it sounds a lot like what they're going to do is they're going to make her a Vastaya, which makes the most sense with the character design that we've got, specifically because her character design and her color scheme already is most closely associated visually with, I think, Ionia. Like, that's really the kind of place that she naturally lends herself towards, and yeah, that could work. That being said, though, Soraka doesn't have a very good character design. Like, she just kind of doesn't, and it begins kind of with the splash art, actually. Heading into my art program a little bit here. This splash art is not... It's not great. Not all the splash arts in League of Legends are. Like, the rendering is beautiful. Like, there's lots of gorgeous colors. The rendering is great, and so on and so forth. But there's some... Like, there are some bad splash arts in League of Legends. There are some, like, some concessions where, like, reality has to take a sidestep in order to allow for a lot of fantasy to happen. But then there are splash arts like this one, where once you see it, or at least once I saw it, I just could not unsee what's going on. So, okay. So, Soraka, take a look at where her head is, right? Her head is here. It's looking forward, and it's pointing a little bit downwards. So, what does that mean? Like, where's her spine in all this? It would be somewhere like here, at which point it has to do this. Like, it really takes a hell of a curve. Just... This looks very, very painful until it reaches her tailbone somewhere down around here. And then there's her hips, right? Because what's going on here, and you can see it from belt, the way that's positioned, is that this hip is displaced from the other in the sense that she's stepping on this particular leg over here while she's lifting this one over here, which means that the hip connection for her leg has to be somewhere around here, I think. And then down here, because the leg itself is here, that has to be there, which means that her spine is going down this way, then it's curving that way, and then it's somehow connecting with the tailbone around here? Which is like, this, the hip connection is there, and then... Good lord! And if you try to construct that, and this is going to take a little while, but it's fine, because we're mostly talking about character design and visuals here. Like, because where would her crotch even be in this configuration? Something like this, I think. And then you got, like, if that's the hip bone, and then there, and then you get her midriff, which is just twisted out of all proportion, and then you come up to the area around her shoulder blades, and that's where we get into the other, because her front arm here, which is poking outwards and casting the spell at us thing, that's up here, right? Where's her other shoulder? Like, where is it? And essentially what's going on here is we've got this arm here extending backwards in a kind of quasi-foreshortening, which means that that shoulder has to be here. But then why are her breasts there? Like, if that shoulder's back there, then how are her breasts even supposed to connect to any of this? And so what you get is a body shape that just looks complete, like it, and there's like, I'm not opposed to distortion for the sake of strengthening the pose. Like, that's a very normal thing, is you break the anatomy a little bit in order to make the pose stronger, in order to make the gesture stronger. That's a normal thing to do, and that's like, lots of comic books, like, sometimes I feel like some people who are like, oh, this pose on this character is completely unrealistic in a comic book, and it's like, yeah, but it's because they're strengthening the pose. It's not because they're trying to strengthen the pose, but then sometimes you get shit like this, where it's just... I mean, what even is this? And also, like, what's the gesture here? What's she trying to do? What's the thing that she's trying to do here. And then, like, if you place her head in relation to all of that, just something like here. That's where are her organs supposed to be? It's not, that's just, it's, she has a liver, right? Like, she has like a liver and some spleens. And I don't know, lungs, guts, does she have intestines? I'm not sure. She does, because where would she put them? Where would that eat, like, from the side of, like, across her midriff is so narrow. And again, the point of this is to emphasize, like, when a character designer does this, when a piece of art does this, it's because they want to emphasize the hourglass figure. They want to make her look slim, lithe, athletic, which is weird because she's not really athletic in-game at all. But it's because they want to emphasize sort of the hourglass figure, the femininity. They want to make her look beautiful. But there's such a thing as straining the bounds of credibility just a little bit, because this looks like she would snap in half. The trouble here is that it, first of all, that the spine is doing this, which is just painful. And second of all, what's the gesture? Like, what's in this image? What is Soraka doing? Where she seems to be lifting her leg here to run forward, right? And we've got the cape and the hair billowing in the wind. But then she's doing this business with her arm, like completely outstretched arm, and kind of swinging it forward like a robot, which is, so she's moving forward to cast a spell, but she's moving in this direction right here, right? But her arm is coming out in this direction here, so she's running in a different direction than she's extending her arm, and her arm is following the eye line, which is also going out this way, and it's a complete mess. And what the hell is she doing with her staff? Like, why is she holding it there? Why is her arm back like this? By try and replicate that pose on your own human physical form, and it's not only an exaggeration, it's impossible. And I don't often get, like I said, for instance, there's the Lunar New Year ribbon skin, like the Chinese army ribbon skin, has a splash art where her spine is just kind of snapped in half. But the reason it's snapped in half is because it's intended to empower a very strong line of action for, she's essentially attacking someone. She's like holding her sword aloft and swinging it down. But this, like, the directions here are completely f***ed up, because the line of action says that she's doing like a sexy beach pose kind of thing, right? But the motion of the body says that she's running, but the swing of the arm says that she's casting a spell. None of it works together. None of it works in unison. And the result is this thing that just looks, at best, it looks really, really stiff, because, especially just because of where her head is placed and how it's formed. Her head is so static compared to, again, if there was more coherence to the gesture, like if it was clear what kind of motion they're trying to exaggerate by breaking her body like that, it would work a lot better. But this expression, this head, the way it's faced forward, and it just sits there, and there's something so incredibly stiff about both her expression, but also about where the head is placed relative to the body. It's undynamic as hell. Where I would have liked to see, like, if she's doing this running thing where she's casting a spell and action's going on, I would like to see her head, like, thrown back, or, like, tilted at an angle, or doing something, or her hair whipping around more. Something to emphasize what the f*** she's supposed to be doing, but it's just, this is one of the splash arts that annoy me. It's just one of the ones that annoy me. But that, let's be fair, this is a criticism of this specific splash art, not really a criticism of the character design, which is technically what we're here to do. So let's talk character design. Let's talk about, what does it mean to be a healer? Like, what does it mean to character design someone for, and she is the healer, like she's the heal goat, she is the prototypical archetype of a healer in League of Legends. That's the majority of her character design is supposed to be about communicating that role. So what has she got going on? Well, she's got a half moon, and the moon is often associated with the sort of healing magic, gentle magic. It's certainly associated with femininity. So sure, that kind of works-ish. Not a bad angle to take, but then there's the rest of her. She's got the goat horns and the ears, and the goat legs. So goats, okay, how do we connect goats to healing? It can be done, like there's myths, various places like where you have the nanny goat, which is helping to nourish children. This was literally a thing that used to happen, actually, is that goats, when a mother was unable to give milk, or she was sick, or she was malnourished or something, oftentimes people would use goat's milk straight from the udder as an early, essentially, replacement for mother's milk. It was imperfect, but it could help a child survive, and that's where the idea of a nanny goat comes from. So you can sort of see that. But then there's the thing. The nanny goat's nourishment, healing properties are connected with their milk, which means, well, without putting too fine of a point on it, you would want to emphasize the boobs a bit. Like, if you wanted to go with she's the nanny goat, she's that nurturing sort of companion to human creatures that helps them, you know, with health and with healing, then you would want to emphasize the whole giving milk part of it. And that demands certain anatomical changes to the character design. And if you're going to go that route, if you're going to go with the nature healing kind of thing, with that particular aspect, in order to jive with the goat aspect, then I would also not make her so f***ing skinny. And again, it's not that you can't have a skinny healer, but it's if you're going to go with the whole, this avatar of nature, you know, giving of their body to nurture the other, then traditionally, certainly in Western cultures, and indeed I think in most cultures really, fatness is associated with that. Like the big round, curvy, nurturing mother figure. You would really want to play into that rather than the skinny, skimpy, bikini supermodel thing that they've got going on with her right now. So like if they wanted to go with that animal aspect, that whole the nurturing nanny goat thing, there would have to be some really substantial changes to the character designs to support that. So what's the other way you can go with it? Well, you can go with the idea of the sorceress healer, like the one who's weaving spells in order to, like where it's not a thing that's connected to sort of the body of nature and giving of yourself to nourish the other, but where it's connected to spellcasting and magic. And in that sense, the tattoos, the blue skin, the half moon staff thing, that works a lot better. Although there I would go, I would give her like I would de-emphasize the goat aspects, really, like, and it's fairly de-emphasized already, so you probably wouldn't need to change that, but what I would do is I would class up the mysticism, like really boost the mysticism of the character. I would really do a lot more to make her look mysterious and kind of unknowable in order to play up the magical healing aspects of her. You might also do something along the lines of tying her closer to water, like which would go really well with the moon and stars thing, because moons and stars and water are all connected in terms of like nautical thematics and stuff like that. You could connect all of that up and give her like make her powers more inspired by water, make her look more inspired by water, like give her something more in like watercolors, turquoise, stuff like that, which would jive pretty well with her blue skin. Something along those lines would improve her. But as it is right now, like, I can see multiple ways to improve her, and especially if they want to really play up the Vestaya thing, I would be excited for that. Like, if they decided to really actually commit to the idea of the nanny goat as the healing aspect thing, that would be a really novel, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone go that way in a game before, like, to really play into that cult of nature thing. That would be really interesting, and I think it would be a lot less interesting if they tried to preserve her original character design by making her more sorceress. Like, I think Celestial Soraka is actually a good example of what I'm talking about in terms of playing up the sorceress aspect, because then you're also bringing in echoes of our modern iconography of the healer, as in the doctor, the nurse, the people who tend to be dressed in long drapes, and the nun, who are very much associated with healing, especially in Western culture, who do tend to wear like long, white, flowing robes of various kinds and have specific sort of uniformed looks, which is very opposite from the nurturing earth healer kind of thing that you could get from in the other direction. So I think Celestine Soraka might, like, much like Ash would be improved if you just replaced her base skin with Queen Ash, I think Soraka could be improved if you replaced her base skin with Celestine Soraka. I mean, there are ways to improve her, but Soraka has a really weak character design. In fact, I kind of liked her better in her old, like before she had her visual update, when she really was a lot more goat-like. Like, she was really much less human. She was much more inhuman, much less knowable, and certainly less hot. I kind of liked that better, that she was alien and kind of other, rather than being like a really pretty girl in a really cool cosplay, which is, there's nothing wrong with. It's just, it doesn't jive with any of what the character is, at least not to me. Well, that was a somewhat longer rant than usual. It's been a while since I've done a full breakdown of like a splash art and gotten really upset and criticized it very heavily like that. Hope you all enjoyed it. It's not something I do a lot because most splash arts in League of Legends are really genuinely very high quality, but this one, someone needed to go back and reconstruct that pose from scratch because, well, it just doesn't work. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, thank you very much. And there's a like button, and a subscribe button, and a bell icon, and stuff. You can do that. And also, if you are so inclined, I do have a Patreon that, if you want to, if you have like a whatever, $1 is more than it's more than I dare to ask for, then you can head on over there. There's some perks over there. I'm gonna put a poll up as soon as I can, as soon as I have time to vote on a future video topic that I'll do like an extensive, fully edited, like proper video essay thing on. But if you don't want to do that, or if you can't, of course, that is completely okay. Don't even begin to worry about it because it's okay. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to get anyone any money if you don't want to. If you've not enjoyed this video, well, I mean, I guess there's a dislike button down below that you can click on, although I would remind you that when you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Unless you're the kind of person who clicks dislike buttons on YouTube videos that people work really hard on. Thank you very much for watching.